is he struggling so much?
He can barely talk properly. Now you are telling us this.
His brothers are fine.
I think your diagnosis is wrong.
Vox, it's important that you work really hard. It's especially important for boys. One day you will need to provide for your wife and family. Do you understand?
What does it mean to be masculine, to be a man according to society? Be strong, have confidence, take responsibility, be ambitious, be brave, be logical. All of these are good things, right? So why is masculinity viewed as such a toxic thing? Masculinity is a set of behaviours, characteristics and roles that are commonly associated with men and boys. The video that I made last year was originally going to cover this topic, but I switched and now I want to revisit this. This whole topic was technically inspired by a very eye-opening experience I had in VR chat a year or so ago, which I'm going to explain a little bit later. On my ongoing self-appointed or perhaps unhealthy need to try and understand why people cannot be at peace with themselves and trying to find solutions, this one stuck out because it's quite a big topic, especially for men. I would encourage anyone though, of any gender, to listen, as this video might be quite eye-opening. Men, at least in my experience, including myself, have had some societal expectations drilled into us from an early age, and it often defines our moral code or compass and how to act. I made a quick chart here as an example of what people typically think masculinity is. I'll just use the examples that I listed earlier. Being strong also means that you are stronger than the majority. This can be twisted though, because this strength could be abused in some way to cause harm, to intimidate, or to dominate others. Having confidence is good, but it also leads to arrogance. You need to be able to admit you are wrong sometimes and know when to stop. Responsibility for others is good. We all need a person that can take charge, but what we don't need is a person who is controlling. A person who thinks being responsible means only their opinion matters is in the wrong. Being brave is almost always seen as a good thing, but it can lead to suppression of emotions. How many boys listening to this have been told not to cry, to just deal with it and take things like a man, all in the name of being stoic and brave? While being ambitious isn't bad, personal gain should never be the expense of others. Being logical is useful for many reasons, especially in some lines of work. It can help you find fault or figure out the best solution to a problem, but if it's used too much, you end up just being apathetic when it comes to people in general. When you draw a chart like this, it becomes more obvious as to why masculinity will be viewed badly sometimes. But wait, hang on a minute. I just did something a bit wrong there. I just misled you. In a way, I lied. I'm sorry for presenting an argument, one that you may have agreed with, that I don't actually agree with myself. But what I did there was something that politicians love to do, which begins by presenting an argument in a narrow scope. All of those negative traits that I listed can also exist in a vacuum without all of those masculine traits. It only sounds like it makes sense if you forget all that and only listen to and reason with what you are being told, not when you look at the broader picture. There is a phrase for what I did. It's called specious reasoning. It's a type of argument that relies on lies, misdirection, or misinterpreted information to make a point. This happens far too often. It's an argument that implies that masculinity itself is the root cause of toxicity by highlighting worst-case scenarios, yet those scenarios can exist in a vacuum, and I know that, yet I made the argument anyway. So, knowing all of that, and looking back on the good traits that I listed and the toxic traits that are associated with masculinity, if it's led you to question what exactly masculinity is or isn't, or can I trust this fluffy little bastard for misleading me, then keep watching, because I'm going to go into that a little later in the video. But first, I want to talk about something specific. Men have problems just like women do. To say that they compare or they are as severe would be wrong, as everyone experiences things differently. But a common one that men often experience is that they are made to feel like if they have issues or struggle in some way, they can be ridiculed for it, or their issues just don't matter due to male privilege. Oh, and please don't parrot the line that men have caused these issues, so they are the ones to be blamed for it. First off, that's misleading. Secondly, it completely invalidates men's problems and how they feel. And thirdly, it's just generally really unhelpful. It fixes nothing, so why say it anyway? In a way, it has become a political issue too, because if you look on the right side of politics, who will bring up issues with, being a man and the issues, men face, the left, it just doesn't. It will only seem to focus on groups that are perceived as marginalised. Pretty much the only time men are mentioned in leftist politics is when they are a problem in some way. And that itself is a huge problem, because that line of thinking in leftist politics is completely failing young men. They need guidance. Being told that they are a problem by just existing, and nothing about being male is seen as a positive thing at all, will just cause resentment, either towards themselves or towards those who push this line of thinking. I have been told to man up and such when I've brought up genuine concerns, and it's easy to fall into a trap of thinking that nobody cares about your problems as a man. But when you go down this line of thinking, this rabbit hole, there's a lot of people that will exploit this feeling. I am, of course, talking about the manosphere, and those like Andrew Tate who run it. Usually every Christmas, I go into VR chat with a bingo card with me. We take a drink whenever a new player says or does something that's very typical for a new person, such as discovering particle effects on an avatar, someone using a not safe for work avatar in a public lobby, a person asking about full body, some kids screaming, etc, etc. It's not done with malicious intent, it's more of a, these things are likely to happen at Christmas, so let's make a game out of it sort of thing. But in December 2023, I was a bit worried about a trend I was seeing in VR chat. Now, note, I don't spend a lot of time hanging in public lobbies, but where there are public lobbies and Christmas time, there is sure to be a lot of children, and a lot of these kids were quoting Andrew Tate. Where is your Bugatti? Women are men's property. Women can never be as smart as a man. Feminists are ugly bitches that are deprived of male attention. Now, these quotes that these kids, teens, adults were saying and laughing and memeing about, they were everywhere. A lot of young boys turn to a man like this and view him as a role model, a person who has openly said things like, rape victims are at fault for being in a position to be raped, and that has said that depression isn't real and it's mental illness is just people being weak. Andrew Tate has said those things. He has also been charged with rape and human trafficking. He fled the country, the UK, to Romania due to this to avoid persecution, which really doesn't help with those accusations and instead makes him look very guilty.
Tate.
No! Bravely ran away. I didn't! When danger reared its ugly head, he bravely turned his tail.
No! Tate.
I didn't! He chickened out, bravely taking
I never did!
He does all this while promoting some sort of ultra-macho version of masculinity that has all the toxic traits that toxic masculinity has, and it works. He has an enormous following. But why? Why does it work? Well, the first why is because of money and followers. The why does it work is more complicated. How can an individual so repugnant and damaging as Andrew Tate and those in the manosphere attract so many young men? It's because they offer a solution. They give validation to men's feelings, and it seemingly is the only place on the internet that does that consistently for men specifically. They build a following through a victimhood narrative. They offer an extended hand to those who feel ignored as men, who feel disposable, who feel like society treats them as lesser because they are male, who feel like life is just hard for them. He gives lessons on how a man should be and how they should treat others to be more successful, how to get more women, how to get more money, etc., etc., whilst also telling his viewers that they are victims of an increasingly misandrist society. The manosphere also teaches young men that they should expect people to be critical of them, because they are oppressed and disliked for being men. So when they are met with any sort of criticism, it just reinforces their beliefs. This version of masculinity that the manosphere seems to promote, the kind that is often an example of what being a toxic man is, treats kindness, gentleness and compassion as some sort of weakness, and promotes the idea that you need to be some kind of rock star and seek lots of personal wealth and sleep with loads of women to be a real man, which is all wrong. Kindness is not a weakness, and it's not emasculating in any way. A friend of mine summed this up really well. A lot of people push this idea that kindness is a sort of weakness, but it's not. Kindness is a strength. It comes from strength. You see it in nature even. If a mother bird has 3 chicks and one is weak, or she can only feed 2, she'll throw the weaker chick from the nest. Birds are weak and helpless animals, so empathy would not serve the mother bird. But in animals like wolves, a top of the food chain tough predator, they will care for the weaker, sicker members of their pack and for their pups, because wolves are strong, and that strength means they can afford empathy. I think the world is cruel and life is easier if you just stop caring, so choose to care, to stay warm and kind. If you asked a manosphere following man, what is the more masculine sounding animal? A bird or a wolf? Almost all of them are going to answer a wolf, not knowing this. That wolves show kindness and empathy to the weak members of their pack. So if you find yourself going down any sort of pipeline, you need to ask yourself, is this causing harm to others? Do you really think that hurting others is masculine? Do you think that being anti-equality or being hostile is good? It's never been about that. Sadly, the manosphere would have you believe otherwise. All of these manosphere personalities all have one thing in common: a goal. And it's a goal for personal wealth and followers, and they have this goal while they are peacocking themselves as leaders. If you buy my program, it will help you become a real man. Want a woman? Yours. Want this Lambo? Yours. Want to be hot? Just take this supplement that I am selling. You can have all of this just by buying my personal program. What makes this worse is that these young boys are victims too. The whole idea of a patriarchy is that men are superior to women, which is wrong to start with, but shoving this idea into a young man's head at a young age, it not only suppresses the women in their lives, but it harms the oppressors as well. Because trying to enforce this will just lead the young man in this instance to be socially ostracized. It will make their lives worse. Trying to live up to this completely impossible standard, trying to be a rock star, it just won't work. They are victims too in this respect. But as I said in another video, part of healing is acknowledging the role that you have played in your own suffering. That doesn't mean blaming yourself though, however. We're not victim blaming here. Those manosphere role models are to blame in this case. And I could go on and on and on about the manosphere, but I'm just going to stop here because it's a huge topic. I would suggest watching this video that I'm going to link in the description from DR.K / The Healthy Gamer, because he explains it much more coherently than I do. It's very eye-opening, so give this a watch. But anyway, let's move on. So far, I have described some of the toxicity that is associated with masculinity and talked about those who profess to others what it means whilst instead being toxic and dangerous, mostly done as a means to get more followers and make money. Let's talk about real masculinity and what it looks like, and to do this, I need an example. I have one in mind, and it's one that you've probably seen before whenever people want to give good examples of masculinity on YouTube, and I am no different. The hands of the king are the hands of a healer.
For Frodo.
Aragorn is one of the best written characters as an example of masculinity in current pop culture. Here is a man who, in the movies, spends a lot of time murdering orcs, and a lot of people will remember him for that, but he's so much more than that when he, isn't killing. Aragorn is strong and protective without being oppressive, dutiful without being prideful, and caring without being passive. Aragorn has spent most of his life training and helping others, being dutiful in the north as a ranger where he learned to fight and survive. So when he enters the story, he uses those skills to help and protect others. There wasn't no point in the movie where Aragorn was showing off all of his skills to impress for his own vanity. He only used them to protect others. Good leaders tend not to want any kind of power or authority. Aragorn only accepts leadership and power when it's to serve others, and there are examples of this in history. Cincinnatus was a retired Roman statesman in 458, choosing a simple life on a farm, but he was called upon to be leader when his home was threatened. He famously stepped in. He was given absolute power by the Roman state, like a dictator, even though he didn't ask for it or want it. He used all this power to defeat Rome's enemies in just 16 days, and then, once he restored stability, he immediately stepped down. He gave up all of his power so he could return to a simple life. King George VI, he never wanted to lead. He had a severe speech impediment and always thought that his brother would be king. So it's something that he never really thought about until his brother, abdicated the throne and he was forced to become king. Turns out he was a brilliant leader during World War II, becoming a figure of British resolve. Aragorn could control vast amounts of power if he wanted to. At any point he could have gone to Gondor, declared himself king and ruled over it and had an army, but he didn't, right until the very end. He sees that without a regent or king, Gondor would be lost and directionless. He was asked to step up by the people, and it was only then did he step up out of duty and the urge to protect his people and friends. He swore to protect Frodo and the hobbits in Lord of the Rings, and he did everything to fulfill that promise. When Frodo leaves the party with Sam, he doesn't just stop what he's doing, he goes after the orcs that have kidnapped Merry and Pippin. He also protected Frodo and the hobbits in the Prancing Pony when he could have easily just taken the ring for himself, and it would have been easy considering how strong he is, but he didn't. When Helm's Deep was going to be attacked, and they were against impossible odds, he didn't flee. He stood there and was willing to die as one of them.
Not the Dagger.
Then I shall die as one of them.
He treats people, no matter who they are, with respect, whether it's the weakest, little hobbit, or a great and powerful wizard. He even shows kindness in small ways, such as telling Éowyn that her food is good when it's obviously awful, saving her feelings. He isn't afraid to show emotion or affection to those close to him, including towards Boromir in his last moments, showing grief and loss when he thought that Merry and Pippin had died, showing doubt when talking about how he was unsure if he could resist the power of the ring, and then letting Arwen comfort him. The quote I said at the start of this was referring to Aragorn as a natural healer. He slowed a venom which would have killed Frodo. He healed Eowyn, Faramir and Merry after the Battle of the Pelennor using his skills, and it's not limited to physical injuries. He's an emotional healer as well. In the books, he gave courage and support to Faramir, who felt like his father would never accept him. He emphasises and shows compassion for those who are going through any kind of emotional struggle, rather than dismissing them. Although saying all of this, Aragorn has one quality which men don't really have in reality, and that is, being a fantasy ranger, being able to kill thousands of orcs. The equivalent to this in real life is, fighting? I'm not really sure how it would translate. Is fighting masculine? Is killing masculine? No, of course it isn't. You need to look at when he fights and why, not his skills in combat or kill count. It doesn't matter that he can kill so many in this fictional movie and somehow still be a good role model, because why he's fighting matters much more. The best people in my life have always been the type of people who share their talents and gifts with others for other people's benefit, not for selfish reasons. And I guess that is what you could call your duty, in a sense. If you are male, you are usually physically stronger and larger than 50% of the population. As a man, I am no different. But I didn't ask for that, though. I didn't ask to be born male. In a way, it's a privilege to have an advantage just by existing, but being stronger also means being responsible. You have no control over the circumstances of your birth, nor did anyone else. It's not fair to use said strength on those that are weaker than you. Your strengths are not just for you, they are for others. That is how we thrive, by working together and using what we can to make our lives and the lives of others better. That is what I would call being dutiful and responsible in a masculine sense. Aragorn embodies true masculinity, not by being dominant or aggressive, but through strength tempered by compassion, with duty guided by humility, and leadership defined by service to others. He demonstrates that real power doesn't come from authority or physical strength, but from using one's abilities responsibly for the greater good. He fights not out of desire or glory, but to protect and uplift those around him. He demonstrates courage, empathy, emotional intelligence, showing us that masculinity at its best is about being dependable, compassionate, and selfless. Qualities that are far removed from the toxic stereotype we often see with the manosphere, which confuses strength with dominance. Aragorn is a powerful reminder that true strength comes from a person's character and their actions towards others. I'm going to show you a tweet. This is Andrew Tate bragging that he is richer than you, more important, and how people are scared of him, how his women never disagree with him, and how your lives are all shit. Here is an extremely bad example of masculinity. He's toxic, he's looking down on others, he's being misogynistic, trying to be intimidating. Having people fear you will not land you friends. It will just show how much of an awful person you are. The response by a Twitter user, Anthony/LibYourBestLife, responds with true masculinity. He's humble, he feels loved, he doesn't want people to fear him, he's happy being appreciated for his efforts, he spends Christmas with his partner and children who all love him, and finally, he ends it by saying that it's okay to disagree with him. So what would you want to do? What is your goal? Because I only see one clear option here. To improve the lives of others, to be a positive force, or to be selfish, to live for yourself, in a way that hurts others, only so that you can feel good. I know which one I would pick. I know which version of masculinity I would pick. Not that it's exclusive to masculinity, of course, and I know masculinity itself is not the root of being oppressive, aggressive, toxic, or whatever. It can exist without those things. I think the best thing that we can do for those that are lost in this kind of toxicity is to try and persuade them, to work hard, to pull them out of this metaphorical rabbit hole, to be vigilant in case one of our brothers starts to become victim to the manosphere. It's a damn shame that this sort of toxicity has made its way into VR chat, but VR chat itself is just a reflection of the people that interact with the game. I think a lot of the time as well, the people who run the manosphere have become a bit lost in in another way, a way in which I think internet culture has evolved, in that we have replaced heaven with fame. But anyway, we have reached the end of the video, but just a quick comment from me. I hope that this video has helped some people rethink what masculinity is and why it's not necessarily a bad thing, and I hope that it can stop some people going down the manosphere rabbit hole. There are better ways to be. And I'm sorry for my let me start that again. I am sorry for my video schedule being so slow these days, but I have been very busy in real life, and I only make videos when I actually want to make them. I don't make them on a schedule because I don't want to get burnt out. I've also had a few avatar updates on the lighting and such that you may have noticed, and that took time. But anyway, thank you for listening. And yeah, watch out for your brothers. If you see them going down this manosphere rabbit hole, try and steer them back before they make their own lives and the lives of those around them worse.